All right, we are back. I hope you guys had a great weekend. My weekend was actually doing a lot of work around my model because that's the time I had to do anything. Thank God for my wife taking the kids to do stuff. So let me just show you this. So I'm doing a render right now. Let me just cancel it so it's not slow for you guys. Just show you this. Stop it here. So I spent the time actually doing some renders over the weekend and testing things out. And I discovered a couple of things. I mean, like the cool thing about those classes is that, always like the latest class is going to have like the latest, discoveries that I have and things like that. So I did some research about the eyes, and I ended up like adding an additional lens. So basically, like I have this glare in there with the transparency. We're going to be talking about eyes possibly tomorrow, by the way, not today. So I did some work in there, and then I was rendering, and for some reason, I wasn't seeing like the result I was expecting to see. Kind of like the refraction was kind of off, and I was using exactly the same settings I was using for all the other models I did before, all the other portraits. But turns out that those guys, they had like mostly like brown eyes or very, very dark eyes, right? And even Ray, he has like very dark blue eyes, and then for her it wasn't quite working. So I actually did a comparison between having this lens, basically like it's a little lens that I have right in between the, it's like I have the sclera, right? And then everything else, the sclera and the cornea here, everything's combining to the same object, right? Just with the transparency. Obviously, you might not know this completely because I didn't speak totally about it. And we're gonna be today would be the day we're gonna be talking about eyes and everything. But I decided we're gonna paint textures today, like the albedo color, and then the eyes. I think it's a more logical sequence to do like all the textures we start talking about like last week, and then do the albedo color today. Do some painting, show you guys all my techniques and everything, and go as far as we can. And then tomorrow we dig into the eye stuff, So we're going to be exploring all the shaders. We're going to break up the entire shader network for you guys to see exactly what I have right now. The models, how I sculpted the models. I have a couple of little videos. You can check it out, like about the sculpting part. I can show you the techniques, but I mean, like the time lapse is pretty self-explanatory. It's like you're going to be able to see how I did it. But I can do a little sculpting as well to show you guys. But mostly the manual work is going to be today with all the albedo painting and everything. So I did some research about this, and I think like the results getting better. Now check this thing out. That's very curious. That I'm talking about all the time, like it's like make the model symmetrical so you can save some time, so you can actually create a nice model you can use for future models. That's what I'm talking about right here. Check this out. So I opened the scene, which was basically like the Stan Winston render, right? That render I have. And then let me see. I have it here. I think I did a couple of more stuff like this. I did actually some color treatment to it to post on the new website, and it looks kind of wild. Let's see if I have it here. It looks very wild because it has this tone, like kind of like a greenish tone now in the whole thing. Looks pretty weird. So it's kind of like it's split like more, it's like there's this weird tone. So I basically like opened the same scene here because that's kind of like a scene that actually worked because of the whole effect with the flashlight, right? The flashlight always sells it. I mean, like even if the model is not great, sometimes you put the flashlight, it really sells it. So I basically like I opened the same scene. And what I did here, I actually imported her base mesh, which shares the same topology. And I just create a morph target, a blend shape, and I blend shape one model to the other one, just brought her teeth and eyes, and basically left the eyelashes in there. So the eyelashes came from Stan Winston. So you see like they are working, but not perfect, obviously. You see like they're kind of messed up. But don't worry about it because we're going to be grooming brand new ones this week. We're going to start, I think like between Thursday and Friday. We're going to, Wednesday and Thursday. We're gonna do some grooming of eyelashes, for example. Maybe like some peach fuzz and then the nostril stuff. It's just like the simplest stuff first before you go to something more advanced, like the the eyebrows, and then the hair that's going to be pretty big. But just to show you guys, for example, if you have a nice base mesh and you don't mess around too much, like when you reuse a base mesh, if you do carefully, you can actually reuse a lot of stuff. So check this thing out. So that's Jessica. It looks very creepy, right? That's her with Stan Winston's skin. So like all the painting and the displacement map, everything is from him, right? So that's kind of like a ballpark, because I see like from a distance, the likeness is getting there. I can see it's her, but it's this messed up skin, right? Like because like an older dude's skin. But the lighting is working because like it's this nice flashlight, and it has a little HDRI that's very low intensity in the back. Tomorrow when we start talking about the eyes and all the stuff, we can use the scene here as well. And then I can show you exactly all the settings for all this stuff. And then, so this was the first step when I imported. So I got this out of the box. So I can tell it's working, you know? So basically like the next step was to replace the messed up displacement map with her own displacement map. So I got this. So this is like the difference between his skin and her skin, like in terms of displacement, right? And then the next step was to remove the color of his skin and just like add the very basic color that she has for her skin right now. That looks like this, right? So there's no detail. You see how much a nicely painted albedo color can add to realism, right? It's exactly the same thing, but here, because she doesn't have a lot of color variation or anything like that, you end up like seeing this shin that covers the entire thing, because you remember I'm using like a coat as a secondary specular for the soft reflections, right? So if you have a plain model like this, like a plain texture like that, it doesn't show much. But when you add something like this, then you start seeing like some more interesting detail, right? Because it's mixing with the color underneath. So it's like it's a big difference. And then because now she's completely clean, doesn't have like all the detail from the color, I actually had to bring the specular down to make something a little bit more natural. So this next step is basically like reducing the specking here, which I might have to crank back up once I have the color for this reason here, right? But I mean, like in the case of Stan, his skin was fairly oily in the reference I was looking. So that's why he got a little bit more reflection and everything. So I think her skin is gonna be a little bit more like this. And then when you add the color, you're probably gonna get something that's less than this for sure, right? But just as an experiment to show you guys, for example, once you have your model completely built with the pores in place and everything, at any time, if you save the same topology, right, like doing the same projection process that I did in the past couple of classes, and then very fastly, if you have like a nice setup for your lighting and everything, I can open this one, show you exactly how I'm doing the lighting, what's the intensity of each one of the elements, so you can actually reproduce on your own. And then once you have that assembled, you can just like tweak, and then everything starts happening, you know? That's why I insisted from the get-go, like to have this a little scene with the lighting setup, a little basic shader network, because at that point, we're just like starting to plug new maps, right? So since we did a couple of maps like last week, I show you like my technique to spray painting, basically. It's very simple, right? Like the spray painting technique for the specular. It's just a matter of like finding the spots where you want more spec or not. And as long as you have like broad splattered stuff, like a lower intensity, right, combined with like stronger intensity, smaller little sparks and stuff, if you add that variation, you should be able to get something that's completely usable, right? And then when it comes to the bump height, was also a very simple map. As I didn't even use any alphas, right? Like I was just painting without any alphas, and I show you guys the map. So seeing this progression here, I can tell exactly what I need to do. So for example, I can go as far as painting a color that's similar to his color, but obviously without all this crazy detail that he had, right? Like those old man spots and everything. But the rest of the stuff, I think like it's in a good path to actually start to work, right? And it's good to see some eyelashes, although it's not her eyelashes, they're gonna be longer, just to see something there, you know. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting for me to just add some of this stuff. I'm actually insisting in doing the color map today more for my own sake. Obviously, I think it's a natural progression, right? Like I said, but also because I want to see her with some color, and I didn't want to do anything over the weekend to you know, it's like I didn't want to step on your guy's toes, you know, it's like by moving too fast. And obviously I already have the eyes here, but tomorrow we're going to be talking about that, so don't worry too much about it. So let's put this one aside for now. It's let me make sure that everything's saved, and let's do some work here. So for the albedo color, let's get my browser. Let's check this thing out. So albedo color is basically, it's the color of the skin, right, without the specular. That's basically what it is. It's basically like it's just a color map without any specular baked into it, or specular and shadows and whatever you have in there, right? In this case here, for example, if you look at this guy, there's a lot about his ears that has like detail baked in that we don't want to have, right? So you see a lot of this kind of stuff, you know, it's like people do those realistic renders, but they are not like completely accurate, because there's a lot of information baked into the model, right? So you take a picture of it, even without any reflection or anything, you see like there's shadow baked in many places. The corner of the eye right there, you know, it's like the connection between the two lips, and then inside of the ears and all this stuff, you know. And ideally, you would not have this baked at all, right? We would just like rely on the actual forms, because yeah, I don't know if you ever watched those videos online, you know, it's like that some women, they just transform themselves like into any character, including like men's, like you know, it's like Al Pacino and you know, it's like Captain Jack Sparrow, right? Like, and they just do that just by using makeup. So with makeup, like with a map, you can actually trick the viewer to believe that there are some shadows in some spots, and when they actually are not there. So that's how women can manage to make like their noses thinner and things like that, just by using some shading on the sides, you know. It's the kind of stuff that you see in this kind of image, you know. It's going to be stuff baked in that's not actually there. So it's hard to rely that the forms are actually there. Sometimes you have something like this, it's going to look like it's deeper than it is because you have shadows baked in, right? So our albedo, we're going to be painting everything by hand, so we are not going to run into this trouble here, for example. And one thing that I want to notice, you guys to notice, is that, for example, like even though you removed all the specular and everything here, right? Still have a little bit of shadow in there. This one is better than the other one because some of the stuff was removed. But you see that the color itself that's left, I forgot what I was about to say. I gotta remember. It's just actually the subsurface scattering is still there, right? I mentioned this before. So for example, we are removing the specular from the map, but the subsurface scattering, there's no way to remove it. So all the scattering of the lighting going into the skin and then propagating and expanding inside of the skin, right? Like reflecting inside and catching those glimpses of like blood vessels, fat, and all this stuff. It's turning everything a little bit more orange than it should be, right? So what we did when we applied that little RGB correction node in Maya, it was last week or the week before, I don't remember, was to actually compensate for that, because at the end we want to have this kind of color here for our albedo, right? But at the same time, when you bring to Maya, you have to make sure that you understand that the subsurface scattering is going to be adding even more of a redness, orange tone on top of this because of the subsurface scattering being applied to this. So it's kind of like a double transformation almost, right? So that's why you have that color correction node, which is basically is going to turn this guy a little bit more pale than it is, right? By increasing the blue channel and then decreasing the red channel. And then we're going to be compensating that by adding actual color to the subsurface scattering. And then at the end, you should have something similar like this. But simply applying this into the model and then applying the subsurface and believing it's going to look great, I don't think it does. A lot of times people do those renders, they look great because they color correct a lot at the end. You know, it's like first renders look completely orange, and then they color correct, remove all that stuff in the post-processing, right? And then they get the right result. But when you do that, you have to make sure that you're doing just on the skin, right? Because if you're color correcting everything else, for example, eyes and everything else, then you might not get the result you want, right? So we're gonna be painting something, and I'm gonna be showing the little techniques I use. It's mostly the same of the last week, like when I was painting the spec stuff. It's just in color. So lots of spray painting, very little actual painting without any spraying. So because I like the variation, and the spray gives us a very nice amount of variation in there. So let me just hide this, and let's go HD just on her face first. Actually, you can keep the entire thing for now. Let's do like create like a base color for everything first. Let's just hide this. Looks funny without her smile, right? Without the teeth. She was actually looking at herself today in one of those renderings. She said, "Oh, it looks just like me. I never saw myself bald, but that's interesting." So let's look at the color itself here. So this is the basic color that I had, but we're going to eliminate the most here. This is kind of like I started from that model where it was the Ray Harryhausen, right? And I smoothed it out a lot of the stuff. But still there's some information in there that I don't want, right? So I'm going to be just like painting everything from scratch here. But we're going to be picking, since this color here it's a nice base color, let's just pick it here. And let's do something like this. You're going to just sample it here from the cheeks, maybe around there. And I'm going to tell you the values I got, which are basically this. So this is the color base that I'm using for a white person, right? It's going to be different from different ethnicities. So 179, 131, and 105. So you can copy those ones. You can pause the video in there. 179, 131, and 105. So basically, I'm going to use the same color. I'm going to just click RGB. And I'm going to just flush the entire thing. Okay. So let's just do color. And you're going to notice that if I flush it here, I'm not in HD geometry mode, right? So it's going to go as far as baking all this stuff before HD. But when you go HD, you're probably going to see other detail in there you're going to have to eliminate as well. But just to show you. So color, and then I'm going to go fill object. Make sure you just have the RGB, not MRGBZ, IMRGB, right? Because this one bakes the material as well. You don't want to bake material. Unless you have the flat color. If you bake it, doesn't matter. But, you know, for now, it's just like the RGB. So fill object. So you see it's a plain model now, right? So let's try to go HD on her right here and see what happens. Oh, it seems like he actually overwrote the top levels as well, because sometimes, at least when you paint with the spray or something like that, it doesn't go all the way, it doesn't propagate all the way to the highest levels of the HD, so you still get some artifacts when you go HD. But in this case here, it seems like it's working, so good. So let's do this. Let's isolate my favorite stuff that I'm going to be painting actually. Get the caruncle as well. Caruncle is not going to be visible, but just in case. And then let's just isolate for now just the face like that before the ears around here. So I like that mask in there. It's going to be a good one to paint. And because also because I can get the entire thing in HD, so I'm going to press A around here, and I should get like 27 million polygons to paint, so it shouldn't take too long to go. So awesome. Let's turn on my perspective, and I can actually turn solo on, so it's just like I just show what I'm actually painting, right? And at all times, I mean, like make sure you have your display properties set to a double, so you can actually see the backside as well. I think this should be on by default, to tell you the truth. Like ZBrush should have that on by default. But so another thing that I did since I'm here, I'm gonna show you guys, did some more variations for my pores. And so what I did, I actually used that little brush that I showed you guys last week. That was this pore depth, right? It was basically like just like a drag rectangle with the elastic and a little alpha, just to actually increase the depth of some of those guys. Right, so for example, like this guy here, just like I pick a couple of them. So I picked like this guy, that, you know, it's like and added some variation in there in the depth. What I also did, I got like another brush, made kind of like a spray version of this one, and I kind of like sprayed out a little bit so you can see there's tiny little pimples. So I add a little bit more irregularity to it without destroying the form that was in there, right? And then there's another brush that I made here, which is basically this. Check this out. I didn't quite like it, but it did the job. So you see, like we have this brush here that we made that we are using a lot, right, for the skin, which is that little Alpha 58 ZBrush, and then apply with the spray. So what I did, I actually exported this Alpha here out of ZBrush, and then I opened in Photoshop as a PSD, right? So in Photoshop, I actually created a layer on top of it, and I redrew it, but I redrew just like those vertical lines you see, but I added more of like this breakup in between. So I painted everything manually, right? So it follows the same structure, but it has more detail in between. I didn't quite like the result because it got a little too crunchy. You have to apply very carefully. For example, if I'm spraying it, I have to make sure I have like the flow at 0, and then color 0, of course, and then placement 0.5. But if I just do the spray itself, it's gonna look very, very messy like that, right? It goes too strong, too fast. But if I'm careful about like applying just like kind of like little bits like this, you can actually get some interesting detail, right? So I ended up adding a lot of this stuff on top of the skin to add that little breakup. It looks like this from, you know, but I don't know if it was overkill, but I actually did like for a lot of the skin. And then at some point it got too crunchy. So, you know, it's like how am I gonna solve the problem now? I covered the entire thing with it. So I actually ended up using the smooth peaks and valleys, right? And I actually smoothed it out and actually preserved some of the detail. Let me show you. You just like undo this. I love when I demo on an HD model because each undo takes forever. Sorry, guys. Such a mess. Okay, let me just do this. One more, a few more. All right, there you go. So, oh, there's one more in there. Don't want to miss that one. So around here in the cheeks, it started getting too porous, you know, and then all of a sudden it's just like it was breaking up too much, and then all the specularity was not reading anymore. So you're gonna see there's a little bit of an interesting kind of detail that happened in here. See like those tiny micro pores in there? This was actually because of the brush that I was using. So if I go to brush, and then you go to your smooth brush, where is it? Here. And then you're gonna see like smooth peaks, right? So I think that's the one that I use, smooth peaks. So if I switch here, so basically like let's get an area that's still a little crunchy, maybe around here. So if I smooth this, see like it's gonna smooth the top of it, and it's gonna preserve just the pores in there, right? Because they're like deeper, right? So that crunchiness that I had on top, I just removed a good chunk of it. Not with the super intensity of 100, obviously, but if you use like, for example, let's say 5 or something like that, and you just do that, now you get like this, you know, it's like this softer surface now. Yeah, it still preserves a little bit of that surface in there, so there's a little bit of breakup, but when the highlights hit it, look at that. It's much more smooth. So that means like when I get like a nice lighting hitting it, so I'm gonna get the more natural looking. So it's a bunch of like different passes, right? Like this thing that things I keep trying. So I added some more of those wrinkles here manually. So I sculpted some of those manually using the same techniques I was showing you last week, right? Just like carving them over. I used this guy's the same brush I just showed you guys, but in the directionality here to just like add more of this stuff. But then if it got too crunchy, I can just use this smooth peaks, right? And just remove some of that. I can even do a little bit right here, very slightly, just to get a little bit more speck in here so it's not too crunched up. And also because I'm using the micro bump anyway, right? So I don't need to break up too much. But for certain areas, it actually works. So I might actually do some more smoothing around here later. But so that's just like an update of the stuff that I use to create the skin. And always trying to do add some variation, right? I added some of those little deeper pores in here the same way, just like pick a couple of them and just make it deeper. And also add this little bumpiness thing, which was basically spray using a similar technique, right? Just with the spray, just to get a little bit more bumps in different places. Anything you can do to add some variation to it, so it's not that plain skin, it helps, you know. So also those little guys, see like those little pimples right here in the forehead, just little, you know, like a little pimples here and there, same way around here, right? So little things you can do to just like incorporate some naturalism to it. So let's go back to the color stuff. That's the meat and potatoes today. So let's get to RGB. And normally when I paint with RGB, if I already have a color like this that's set, I'm gonna switch like to something a little bit lower. So let's start with 10, for example, to paint our colors. And I try to do in layers, right? Like you're gonna paint like multiple layers of stuff, just like we did with the specular map, where you painted like variations for the intensity and the size and all that stuff. But in this case here, let's switch to this brush, and I'm gonna show you what the settings are. So let's see, skin color spray 2. Let's try this one first. Actually, let's see if this one is a better one. Yeah, I think this one is good anyway. Okay, so let's start with some, I have to obviously find some reference of my wife here very quickly, because I wanna get like a ballpark of all this stuff we're gonna be painting today. I'm gonna get like go for a more natural color like this. It's kind of like a natural light, right? It's pretty blurry here, but I get like a ballpark of the colors I'm gonna be going for. Something like this, or let's see, another one that's kind of like daylight like that. This one, I think this is a good one for daylight as well, you know? So gonna go for something like that. And one thing that's like a common mistake is to actually go too pink around like nose and cheeks and things like that. The variation between those different areas is not as huge as you might think, you know. Obviously, if you want to go for something more stylized, right, like kind of like a Rockwell kind of painting, right? Like you go to you're gonna model like a Santa Claus, you're gonna have this super red nose, right? But that's not what we want. We want something more natural. So to start this, if I simply switch to material, like to the flat color, it just goes away. I cannot see any of the features, right? So it's hard for me to paint in here. So instead of like using my startup material or the flat color, I'm gonna go for the skin shade. That's the default in ZBrush, right? Like not the default, but it's there available. So at least it's a little bit more washed out, and I can see a little bit more of what I'm doing, right? So I'm gonna start adding some color variations in here. Let me see if I can find even another reference here. Maybe this one I was taking at the Louvre last year in the Louvre when we went to France. Awesome conference. They paid for everything, and they paid for my wife too. Nice guys. So let's take a look here. So let's start adding some of the colors. I normally start with deeper colors, right? So I'm gonna go with the darker stuff first, and then I start like building the volumes up with the lighter stuff, right? So I'm gonna start by adding some variation here. I'm gonna pick the same color, so just like click and drag from here, right? Pick the same color, make sure you have that one. I'm gonna start playing with some variation. I'm gonna slightly add some more red to it and saturate very slightly here. I have intensity, let's try maybe like 15, something like that. Let's see how much of the variation you're gonna get here. So you start seeing already. I hope you're gonna be able to see this stuff because of the compression. You know, it's like when it comes to color and stuff like that, it seems like the compression that happens automatically from Zoom, it actually messes up this stuff. So that's basically what I'm doing here. The only thing I'm gonna do is that you see like I have a gradient in here and it has an alternate. You can either play with this or you can simply change this from color 0.5 to 0 here. So it doesn't add any variation. So now it's just a plain color. So it's just like that single color, right? So now it's a little bit more broad color that I'm gonna be adding. So I'm gonna do in symmetry. And we're gonna start with some area, let's see, maybe like around here. And then we're gonna go straight to around the eye. So I'm gonna add a little bit more redness around the eyelids, the top, just using that brush. And you cannot see much now, but if I switch to this, right, you're gonna start seeing more of the color variation in there. once you have a little bit more color, we're gonna be able to switch completely to that shader and then go from there. But for now, because we cannot see anything, we're just gonna be painting some more color here. So make the eyelids a little bit darker and redder, right? Add some flow in there. Gonna move to the nose in here, same deal. Let's add a little bit more redness, especially not quite in the tip right here, because there's the cartilage, and with the cartilage, you're gonna be seeing, you know, it's like a little bit more of a white surface in there, right? Because there's a pressure coming from within. So we're gonna add more redness, more at the top right here, but very subtle. You see, like I'm using 15 for intensity, but I'm not going like this and color like full power, right? I'm adding like a very, very slight touch. I try to use like a very slight touch with the tablet here to kind of like add those colors in layers, very thin layers. So I don't go too crazy with the pressure at this point. So inside of the nose, probably gonna be darker. And instead of messing there, I have to fix that geometry as well. I'll make it a little deeper perhaps. But I'm gonna add some redness in there, but then they're gonna go maybe a little bit darker later, but just to have a little base color. I'm gonna do the same for her lips in here. See, like everything is with the spray, right? I'm not using a plain color whatsoever at this point. And from this point on, I think everything we're gonna be painting is gonna be with the spray. It's just nicer, you know? It's like he adds this natural form instead of like having a super defined lipstick, right? If you're going for someone without makeup, then you wanna have some kind of variation, a little bit of more spray effect in the edges, right? So I say right a lot. I was watching my videos and I was like, right. So I have to stop that. I just noticed. So let's do this. And also one thing I have to apologize to you guys. I was watching some of the videos and there is like this talk sound happening all over the place. I was like, what is this thing? And I think it's because I had a little prop right here close to the microphone, and I think that thing was banging in there. And although I could not hear from in the office when it was recorded because it was banging right at the microphone, it was a little bang. It sounded pretty loud. I was like, man, that's so annoying. Poor guys over there. So I apologize for that. Obviously, like I can still hear myself and all that stuff. But it's just annoying, you know. So I hope this is fixed now. I removed whatever was in there. So very subtle. See, like the forms start like to show a little bit more, but all the colors I'm adding here, they're very, very subtle. We're gonna be worrying about the depth of them and everything a little bit later. But for now, I'm just gonna block. And you saw that I didn't go too far from my original spot for the color, right? It's just like slightly shifted to red, slightly more saturated and darker. And that's about it. I don't want to go too crazy at this point. The biggest mistake is to actually go at this point here and just make this, right? And then your model looks like this. It looks like you just had some, got frozen by ice or something, burned by ice. So we're just gonna do this, add some more redness in the corners right here. And then around here. And then there's a lot of colors that we're gonna be playing with. We're gonna add like after we have laid down like the reds, the oranges, and some purples, we're gonna be adding even some blues and greens as well, and lots of yellows as well. So everything starts very simple, like with anything, right? Like when it comes to model, you start blocking the model, right? And you start detailing later on. So that's basically like those are the primary forms here, right? This is the primary colors. We're just adding some variation. And because it's so subtle, it's gonna maybe be a little tricky to see with the compression that's gonna happen with the software. And the thing is, like with Zoom platform, there's no way for me to even tell it like compress less, you know? It's like I cannot find that. It's always like the same default. So let's switch to flat color, and now you can see some stuff, right? So now you can have an idea about where the nose is, where the eyes are, right? I can actually go around here, maybe add some variations in the chin, because now I can see a little bit of the chin. Very subtle colors in there, right? Let's go maybe like around the neck in here. And I think the thing I have to do as well to help with the compression thing is to actually pause from time to time and let it resolve it. So for example, like if there's no movement or something, it kind of resolves it so you guys can see what's going on. Because if I keep spinning things too much, I don't think he resolves, you know, it's like the compression is going to start getting all mushed up again. So let's just do that. From time to time, I'm going to pause just so you guys can see what I'm doing here. Try to slowly, you know, it's like try to understand how this whole system works. So actually, you guys have a better experience. So anything I can do to help. So let's see. Let's go back to the skin shade. And now let's introduce a little bit more of purples. Very, very subtle as well. So for example, I'm going to get all the way down here. You see like kind of like a purple color right there. And I'm going to get very desaturated as well. So it's almost like going towards purple and black around here, this corner, right? And then intensity going to go very low, like let's say 3. And I'm going to add some of that around here. So I'm even going to turn to flat color so actually you can see if I'm going too crazy with it. Very slight purple right there. And then in terms of purple, I think like I only use purple around those areas and a little bit on the lips as well. But the lips are gonna be kind of like overriding with a little bit more of like a magenta color soon. But I'm gonna add some of that purple in here for now, just very slightly. Right. And then now, let's move on to some oranges here. So let's sample the color of the skin again. So like you know, that default color. I'm gonna crank a little bit more towards the saturated and down. So basically like saturated and darker slightly. Maybe a little bit more yellow, tiny bit. So there's another thing you can do here, which is first I'm just blocking those major colors, right? Like those major forms. But you see I'm using this alpha, which is just an alpha, it can be like 35, something like that. And the spray is that very basic, you know, settings, right? Like a flow of 25, no color, scale 1, placement at 0.5. And then for my alpha here, I don't think I even have anything fancy. It's just like maybe a tiny little bit of the curvature in there, so 1 point. But you know, you can actually, instead of using this guy here, which if I make very strong here, it looks like this, right? Looks like this thing. So it's very strong. You can actually make like a very tiny little detail, just like to add more variation faster. So instead of this alpha here, just click the alpha number 23. And now if I show you what this does, it does this type of super tiny effect right here, right? So it looks weird because we apply with a lot of power in here. So it looks like this, right? But if we do this with a very low intensity and doing layers, we can get a lot of stuff to look very nice actually. So let's just go to pick the same color again, default color, and let's get some oranges again. So a little bit more towards the yellow, saturated and down slightly, and a very low intensity, let's say 3 or 4. Let's try 4. And then around this area here, I'm gonna add some orange now. The sides of the nose. And it's very, very, you know, it's like low intensity as you can tell. It's just added this layer of tiny little specks now of orange. I'm gonna go down here, around the lips. I'm gonna add some orange here as well. Everything is very, very, very subtle. I don't go like full on with any color, too fast, you know. I'd rather go and lift any colors if I go too dark with whites later on. I'm gonna show you. The whites actually pop, make everything pop. And this area over the eyelids, the upper eyelids, they go very, very, very pale. You know, it's like again, like with white people, right? I'm a brown person. I'm a Latino Brazilian guy, but you know, it's like my eyelids are a little bit darker. You know, that whole area is darker. But with those white dudes and my wife. It gets very pale in there. I think it has to do maybe like with the shadow from the eyebrow or something. I don't know. It's just like it's so pale underneath. And if you don't make it pale, it's sometimes like it doesn't look right. You know, it's like it's very weird. So I'm gonna add some more orange around here, top of the nose. I'm just gonna start blending this orange around those reddish areas. So I'm gonna just add some more. And it's gonna be hard for you to see the detail because I cannot see either, you know. It's just like it's so subtle, but it has all those tiny little specks in it. So now we have a little bit more orange in there. So let's get some pinks, actually a little bit darker reds. So let's get to like a little bit more towards magenta here. And then let's get always desaturated, right? Instead of like using something like this, I would never do that. I'm gonna pick something very desaturated, close to black, something like that. And then I'm gonna go to areas like the eyes again. We're gonna go around here. And I'm gonna build this into the eyelids. So let's do a little bit, yeah, the intensity is good. It might be a little too specky here, so I'm gonna switch back to the alpha 35 I had. So it has a little bit less of those tiny little dots, just to add some color, but without going too super fine with the detail. The fine stuff it's good, but for this area here, it would look a little bit too, especially when you're using like darker colors, like browns and purples. If you go too far with the spray, like it starts reading as something is dirty, you know, it's like gets too full of little specks in there. So that's not what we want. We want something to look a little bit more natural. So that's why we switched to alpha 35 instead of like the super sprayed one. Let's get this. I'm gonna start adding more depth to this color for the lips. I'm gonna go back here, and we're gonna get darker and darker with them until we get that tone. It's kind of like pinkish, red, magenta tone, but always with the help of some spray, right? Never too plain with the color. The fun part is going to be her freckles. She has a ton of freckles. And freckles, I think the best way to paint, if you're doing everything manually, is by creating masks. Because if you try to paint manually, just like one by one, sometimes it doesn't get like sharp enough. It's hard to control. But if you have like little masks in there in place, it's easier to control. You know, it's like at least I think, in my opinion, personal. So now you see like I have too much of that stuff like leaking at the top right here. So I can actually clean it up later, but for now I'm just going to town with the spray, right? So let's go a little bit darker than that and a little bit more saturated now. So darker, more saturated. So let's do maybe a intensity a little bit higher. We can get this faster. And also, yeah, I think it's gonna look good like this. So let's turn off the symmetry right in the middle, otherwise you're gonna get the same pattern in there. And same for this guy, so no symmetry in there. And one thing you can do as well is see like it's pretty spread out, like the spray is spreading too much. So sometimes you can do like the placement in here a little bit closer to 0. So let's do something like this. So it shouldn't spray too far from where I am. So I can add the variation, but without like spraying too far. And also I can increase the flow. You know, it's like, so you can get like more stuff sprayed at the same time. Just gonna get that. And then obviously when you get to the inside part, I'm gonna have to actually have the inner mouth later and just like match that color. I'm just gonna paint that little border in there since I'm seeing it. And same for this guy here. From the inside. That's why it's important to have like double side. You can actually paint stuff from the inside. So that's a little better. So it got a little darker now, but still too much on the red side. So we're gonna add some more pink. Gonna do like a little desaturated like that, and then lower intensity. In this case here, if it's just a thin layer, you can even turn off everything. So I'm gonna turn off both. And I'm just gonna do a plain pass with a very low intensity, like a 2, just like to even things out. So the color is gonna start getting a little bit more even now. Right, so top, same thing. So I got that benefit of the variation, right? Like it's random underneath. But then I get a little bit more of more even surface, right? If you add that. Actually, I got too strong right in the middle here because of the symmetry. I'm gonna just turn off the symmetry. I'm just gonna paint that manually right there. And then side. So now the color looks okay-ish. And this, obviously, we're gonna be painting for a little while. Probably gonna take me another day or two to actually get stuff that I actually like. But as a ballpark for our renders, I'm hopeful they're going to be able to do some render tonight, actually, with a little bit better skin, not great, but better skin. So now let's start like let's get some browns in here. Let's get this. I'm gonna go brown and a little bit desaturated brown as well. So I try not to do too much saturation in any place. But I'm gonna add some browns around here, this inner part. And again, I'm not using spray at this point. I'm just like using a plain one, although I said like I'm probably gonna use just spray from now on. I think just to block it, if you start with without spray is better, but then it's like you can always use to even things out as well. Just adding a little bit more of a dark skin in here. It always helps with eyelids, a little bit reddish, a little bit darker. So I'm adding some brown just to help out. And then I can add like some more reds later, right? Something like this. And then let's see if we can add some more brown, perhaps sides here, the corner of the nose, and then especially inside of the nose. It's probably like more like red in there, but we're gonna have like a hair inside as well. So, just to help to get a little darker in there. Something like that. So now we have a very, very basic skin. So let's add some stuff in here, some more variation, right? So let's go to color. Let's turn it off. Let's see, flow 0, placement 5, scale 1. That's fine. And let's go to alpha 23 again. And let's get, you know what? I think instead of this guy, well, let's do this one just to get some of the color a little bit more lifted. I'm gonna show you how I use like some yellows and some whites as well, just to bring things up. Because at this point here, we have like a very plain color, right? And we are basically building the negative stuff, so like all the darks, but we have to build the light stuff as well. So that's what we're gonna be doing. And from time to time, if you wanna get like a similar color to start with, you can just like sample from any place you just painted, right? So for example, if I get this little corner a little bit more brown here, I can actually introduce a little bit more of a tan on top of her nose, very slightly right here. And this one, I'm actually using this tiny little specks like this, right? It's just like doing very, very subtle. So that's basically what I'm doing, but with a very low intensity. So I'm gonna go back. Actually, I can go a little bit higher than that so you can actually see it. So at 20-something, 26%. Just gonna add some of those little micro details here. hope the compression doesn't screw it up. I'm glad you guys are here because whoever is watching is probably not going to be able to see that stuff that much because it's so subtle. Actually, let's go symmetry here. Symmetry I use a lot because of the, you save a lot of time, right? But then obviously you're going to have to go on another pass and then remove some of the symmetry and introduce more stuff. For example, I'm not going to do like some, birthmarks with the symmetry. That would be silly. So let's get a little bit bigger. And then maybe here you're going to be able to see now, if I do bigger, a little bit of this rust. A little bit rusty in there. And then turn it off when I get closer to the center because I don't want the symmetry to show in there. So here it's going to be asymmetrical. Just adding it. Now at this point here, you see like my brush is very big, right? I started with very small. So I go back and forth, like changing the size of the brush and the intensity of the brush. So like this is very important to add variation. I was like, if you're doing something with this size, you might as well switch soon and then add with a much bigger brush, or you can just like zoom out and then keep using the same brush, and you just basically like create more bigger brush like proportionate to the size of the face by just like zooming out, right? So if I zoom out right here, now this brush is going to be much bigger in comparison, so I can get some of those. Actually, dynamic was off, so let's do this. Oops. Let's do this. So now I have a bigger variation in there, bigger shapes. So, it's like a same intensity, but like much bigger now. So I can get more of that little splattered effect. Same for this area here. Let's try this. And then I'm going to go back under the chin a little bit. Just adding a little rust. But it's nothing like, it's like freckles or anything like that. It's just a little variation for the color. But then we're going to have to introduce some of the most, the stuff that actually is in her skin, right? We're going to have to try to emulate that type of effect. So just adding this little rust right now. And let's bring up some stuff. So let's make this nose here to show up as if we had like a cartilage underneath, right? So to do that, I normally switch back to a simple brush, so like 35 or something, right? Normally those brushes I normally repeat. I'm gonna switch to yellow, slightly on the orange side, and then bring almost all the way to white and a little bit more saturated like that. And then I'm gonna go here. If I draw with the same intensity, you're gonna be able to see because at 26 is gonna be too strong. But just so you can see what I'm doing here, right? I can make even a little bit more or yellow, so it's slightly more saturated. So basically, like I'm doing this, right? So what I'm doing here now, I'm gonna introduce a little bit of that impression that there is a cartilage in there. So I'm gonna reduce intensity to like 3 or 4, and I'm gonna go very slowly and building this in little layers. Just create that impression, even a little bit more yellow than we had, so more saturation around here. Since we are here, we're gonna move to the bottom eyelids. Let's switch to this skin shade so I can actually see what I'm painting. So around this area here, I'm gonna introduce more of this, whitish pale and yellowish, right? So just like in the bag right here. Don't tell her I called bag. And then around here as well. So let's switch back to this, and now we can see what we're doing. So just by adding this, it starts getting a little bit more interesting. And I was like, the whites normally are what bring the realism up, in my opinion. It's when you start introducing like those pale yellows and whites. So for example, like around here, if I do like very strongly so you can see what I'm doing here, like this, This type of little speck, it adds a lot to realism, but you have to do it very carefully, right? So I was using 20 to show you, but I can go back to, let's say, like 5 here or something. And then I'm gonna start introducing that around maybe like the cheeks around here. See, like there's this very subtle effect that happens. Let's see if I zoom in, and I'm gonna pause around here so you can see it. And also for whoever is watching the video later, I hope the compression actually resolves at this point here and fixes in the image and kind of like stop compressing. But I really hope you guys to see this. This is basically like just using the white, right? That's the stuff that actually adds a lot to the realism, in my opinion. It's when you bring those little tiny respects, you know. It has to be always mixed with the darker, especially like closer to darker tones. Like if you have an underlying like darker tone, those guys gonna really pop, and they're really gonna add to the variation of the skin. So especially like around here, not so much around the top of the lids, but so let's see, the forehead, we can add quite a lot of that. Something like that. I'm just gonna switch to symmetry, more on top here. And then at any time, if it's getting too white, obviously, you can just go back and add some more, mix some more color in there, right? And get it down again. But it's important to actually try to get those things. So like I said before, like on top of the lid right here, like right above the lid, I'm gonna start adding a lot more white in here. So I'm gonna make this area very, very pale. With a lot of spray. I might actually have to turn this one off and put like an alpha 36 again, or 35, just to add a little bit more of a broad stroke. And if I went too far, I can actually bring it down again. See, I went like to a much smaller brush now, and I'm doing like very fast movements. Get some more variation in there. So if you went too far, what I normally do, I kind of like sample a default color or something average like this, and then I try to mix with whatever is in there. So just like kind of like go around those edges, then blend it back. Also with spray. So back here, just blend a little bit more. Okay. Now we have a little bit of variation, but we don't have a ton going on when it comes like to freckles and things like that. So we can start introducing some of them. Let's try this. Let's see, I have one here. I think I made one. If I didn't, we can do it from scratch. So I have this liver spot here, but I don't know if it works really great, but you can use it. It's basically like the alpha that's in ZBrush. That's this alpha 15. And I'm just like cranking the contrast a little bit. So the contrast is at 2.5 here. So that's the only change that I made. And then I use this guy, for example, to paint like custom freckles, but not like the freckles themselves. I rather use mask for that. But for example, like for little, you know, birth signs or something like that. So I'm gonna go to something like, let's see, like a desaturated, not totally desaturated, but like let's get this color here on average, and then just break it down a little bit like that. Not by much. So let's see what it does. So you can paint stuff like this, right? So let's look for some areas here. For example, this one here, that's what I meant when I did the fill from before the HD. That means that now we have that little sign that it's still in HD. So basically, like this one wasn't completely removed. That's just like I said. You removed most of the stuff when I filled the object with the color before HD, but this one was actually in HD, so it preserved some of that detail in there. But it's cool because now we have a little reference for her little sign in there. So I'm gonna just be painting a little bit more, a little darker, little dots here and there, instead of like painting plain, you know, a plain brownish kind of thing. I'm gonna add some slightly more red and more saturated as well. Let's try this. just in between here. And then maybe do darker. So some darks, reds, and maybe do a bit more brown as well, right here. So, and now let's look for something else on her skin here, which can be like very peculiar in her case. So let's see, like there's one of those guys right here. So I'm gonna use this little liver spot brush that I have. I'm gonna just paint around here. And maybe more towards something like this. Let me just sample this color. That's the blend between the two parts, this one here. So it's a blemish that's gonna be a little bit more on the red side. You guys are free for to ask questions. We are right at 10:30. And yeah, feel free. Let's see, we're gonna be looking for some areas here just to get some of her very specific little spots. It'll be hard to see here, let's see. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do some masking here just to start trying to capture some of those freckles that you see right here. See, like all those guys? I'm gonna try to add some of them with some mask. Let's do this. So now, let's get, maybe like I can use even like this brush here. It's good. I'm just gonna do this. So like, I'm gonna bring the focal shift all the way down. So it's like a very sharp mask I'm gonna be able to paint. Something like that. Actually, I'm gonna have to assign that to the mask because I don't have it just now. So if I press Control, I'm gonna click this guy. While pressing Control, I'm gonna click 15. And then I'm still pressing Shift. I'm gonna crank it to 2 point something, 2.5. So now I can use the same one to paint my masks, right? The thing about masks is that by accident, sometimes if you just touch the mask is gonna kind of like get softer, right? And it's very annoying if you're painting a big area like this, because if you do this little mistake, you're gonna be, you know, it's like back and forth, especially with HD, it might be a big time consuming thing. So under preferences, let's see if I remember here. Under edit, there is this click to blur masking here, right? So we just like uncheck that. So now I can actually go and paint some mask here. If I double click by mistake in the middle of it, it's not gonna do anything. Just gonna do, there's like 2 layers of freckles in there in her case. There's one that's like the more broad stuff, and there's like some deeper ones right in the middle. So I'm gonna try to do something with, let's switch material here so I can see. I'm gonna do something like start with the bigger ones first. And then let's just like a bigger form, a little bit more random. And then I'm gonna do, start like with the little ones right in between. So I'm gonna start like this. Let's just do a little bigger here. A little bit more random. And let's go here. And there's like a little variations in size and shape, right? In shape. So let's go a little bit longer on this one. Around here, let's see, she has a little one here, a little longer this way. And then down. Obviously, I'm not going to be matching a 1-to-1, right? Otherwise, I would be basically like putting an image behind it and trying to match that. But you know, it's like getting the idea that they are there and slightly in the correct spot, right? You're definitely not doing something like to reproduce a human 1-to-1. Otherwise, you would be insane because there's no way to do it. What we have to do is like try to create an impression of that person and have fun with it, you know? The more open you have, some people might think that I'm slacking for not doing it the way I should. But the more you do this kind of stuff, you know, it's like the more freedom you have to actually create something, you know. And I appreciate that part. It's very boring to create something 1-to-1 reproduction from a live person. I think it's pretty boring, you know, because it becomes like a very technical thing, and there's very little art involved. Not very little. There's a lot of art involved, but but you know what I mean. I mean, it's like it's nicer when you have some freedom to, you know, it's like even painting freckles is still like it still has room for to put your style in there, you know. So she has a lot of those little guys. I'm gonna paint like most of it here, and I'm gonna start adding some colors so you can see how this is gonna work out. So I'm making like the bigger ones first, and then the in-betweens are gonna have like some tiny ones. And I have to be careful when I paint from an angle like that because it can actually slide and become something much longer than it should. Some of those going to have different colors as well. Some are going to be a little bit more like a brownish, rusty, and some of them going to be more on the red side. And make sure that I don't have like a perfect line in there. I got this, another one around there. Maybe the last one we're going to be around here, and then she has a little pimple in here that I forgot to add, but we can just do a little mask so we can actually sculpt a little wrinkle, a little pimple in there later. And same here. Let's see. She has this little sign in there, and let's do maybe around here, small, bigger. This one's going to be bigger, but it's also more pale. And then there's some bigger ones underneath. But I mean, like we're gonna have to pick, for example, those ones I'm painting right now. I'm kind of trying to identify the ones that have the same intensity and similar colors, not quite the same. I mean, like some browns, but then I'm gonna do this again with some bigger, more broad ones, and then also some very tiny ones right after that. So I'm gonna do like maybe like 3 or 4 passes of those guys. But I'm going to start with this one first. Do this, and get something like that. A little longer. There. She has it's going to look like a little leopard. So many little freckles. All right. You guys are so quiet today. You guys still there, right?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, there you go.
Chris, I have a question.
Yes.
So in the picture, her face is like white, right? Like white reddish.
Yes. Uh-huh.
But
yeah,
why you paint her like orangey?
Oh, well, what I'm saying is that I'm gonna be painting this stuff first and then bringing up those values, right? So I'm gonna start like adding a little bit more pinks and whites to bring everything up. So it's gonna happen, but like, yeah, she's pretty orange right now.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and also because I'm gonna be desaturating the orange quite a lot in the with that little node that we have in Maya. So that's gonna eliminate a lot of the orange as well, and just like the deeper color is gonna be actually more visible. It's gonna all work out, at least we hope.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
I had a question about your lips, actually.
Yeah.
Because I remember looking back at your stand model, and your lips looked like they had just like a lot of information in there. They look really good. I mean, are you essentially just doing the same thing, like just kind of painting it in, you know, same situation?
Yep, same situation. It's just a matter of like how far you're gonna go with the variations with the spray. But it's basically the same stuff. I mean, like, let me see if it's still here. This one? No. I think I closed it. Let me go back here. Personal project.
Making it look easy.
Yeah. You know, it's like it's always that thing, you know, it's like it's how far you're going to be pushing it. I mean, like if you keep painting it, eventually things start looking good. But let's see. Stan Winston, where is it? Right here. Images, and then let's bring maybe one that has a big close-up like this one here.
Oh, and quick question, because like you can see the ears in that image. Is for the ears, was a lot of that painted in through the there's a lot of like color information actually in the ears. are you putting that in the diffuse and then plugging that into the subsurface, or is that
It's just plain subsurface.
okay? So that's just from your like SS map or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah. It's just the SSS color, right? Because
Got it.
for the color, the radius, I use a plain color for this model here.
Okay.
And so basically, like, it's just a plain color. But then for the ear, you see, like, when you have like the cartilage, I try to add more whites and yellows, like I did with the nose before. And I did this a lot for the ear. So there's a big variation in there. So you can like read a little bit more of like a cartilage, you know.
Is the same thing happening in the lips then? Like, is some of that information the SS map or whatever map you're plugging in for the SS?
No, everything is a color map. Everything is the albedo. So
Okay.
yeah. So all the stuff you're seeing here, it's like deeper colors that I painted in there. So for example, like I went with that liver thing that I just used, and I just painted a little bit stronger those tiny little dots. But then there's a lot of color variation used with the spray in here. It's like there's it's basically like it's mostly spray. Oh, I hate this thing when it doesn't slide. It's mostly spray. But then when you add those tiny little things, it actually breaks up that impression, you know? But it's mostly spray.
Very, very cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah. So
Crazy.
yeah, man. But I mean, like, this is very basic right now, but we're gonna get there. This is gonna look, hopefully, gonna look decent at the end. So let's see. Let's go back to her here. At this point, I'm using like a crappy picture like that just to capture some of the positions of the freckles. But then we're gonna be maybe like on purpose we can actually blur them a tiny bit, but probably not. I'm gonna just keep them the way they are right now. And let's start with those guys here. So let's reverse the mask. So like Control and then click outside. If it doesn't work, you do it again because ZBrush is buggy like that. So second time is a charm. Do it. And now it's masked. And then if you press Control H, it actually hides the mask, right? But still there. So let's switch to our, let's do like a standard brush now. So basically like this one doesn't have any spray in it. And I'm just gonna block those little forms in there. So let's switch to something like, let's pick the color itself of the skin. Maybe like a little bit more towards the orange part that we painted around here. And then I'm gonna make it darker. And let's switch to RGB, and then intensity, let's make it 1 so we can actually see exactly what we're doing. And then let's start painting here. I'm gonna actually remove my, where is it? Lazy mouse, let's remove it. So now we're gonna start revealing some of those guys. And it's still a little bit too desaturated. I would like to have a little bit more saturation. So let me just undo for a second. And I might actually pick some color that's kind of like maybe closer to that. Let me get something that's from the family here. Let's get around here, the side of the eye, and maybe add a little bit more redness to it, very slightly. Hopefully it's not too saturated. Oh, it's actually good. So just gonna add some of those guys. Gonna be revealing them very, very slightly like that. Everything has to be like in tiny little layers, you know. It's like a very, very slight stuff. So those are okay. Let's see if we missed any around here. Just to double check. Yeah, so Control H, we still have some on this side that I have to reveal right here. There you go. Now they just popped. And then around here, anything we can find. There, the side of the nose. I remember putting some here. So yeah, there they are. And then, so those are just like the ballpark here. So we have like the position and everything. And now we can actually go with another little layer. We can do some of the darker ones. So for example, if I get, or I can just paint some of them completely by hand. So if you go to our liver spot. So that's basically this basically like a standard brush with that alpha that I mentioned, right? And just with that little contrast thing. So just gonna pick a few of them here, and I'm gonna introduce a little bit more color and darkness to it. So we're gonna get a little bit more on the red side and deeper. And I'm gonna go, for example, like pick, let me see one here that she has some dark in it. Maybe like this one, maybe a little bit redder. Something like that, just a tiny little detail. Let's get another one here, maybe this one gets a little bit darker and maybe too saturated, so a bit more like that. And then let's get another one here, just slightly darker. Just picking some of them and just adding tiny little specks in there in the middle. And then at some point we can just do this basically like plain color. So for example, like those guys here, I can do like a very tiny speck. So let me pick like a little bit more saturated red, and let's get around here. Let's paint something like that. And then tiny little dots. This is kind of like the little dots I painted on his lips for his stand. It was like slightly brownish. Very simple. And let's see, like the tip of her nose, she has one in here, but it's not as dark. So I'm gonna go very, very subtle with it. Let's see, around here. And maybe a little bit more red. Let me do the red stuff later. Let's see, she has one right here, which is like really close to the color of her lips. So her lips are still a little bit too much on the saturated side of things, right? So let's do a little bit of work on the lips and start blending and getting a little bit more realistic in here. So I'm gonna just sample the color of the skin again, and I'm gonna turn a little bit more towards the saturated, a little bit more white as well. So let's switch to our color that we had before the spray. And I'm gonna start mixing this like with symmetry. Right around the edge here, introducing this whiteness. Around there, and then around the bottom part as well. Let me just see her reference right there. Yes, I can even go a little bit smaller with those little guys around here. So you see, like I sampled the color of the skin, this one, and made it a slightly more desaturated and white, pale, just like using it to blend the skin with the lips now to make it look more natural, you know. So now what yes.
So I was gonna say one thing that I think might be helpful is a separate video just on the creation of the different brushes.
Oh, sure,
it
yeah.
It might be a little faster to find, you know, how to go about creating all the different brushes if they're in a separate little video.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because everything's kind of mixed together. Yeah, it's a good idea. I can actually do this as a personal assignment, you know, because at this point I'm actually doing putting together this kind of like online school now because of the piracy thing, and then I have to put some videos and some promos and things like that, and I might do that, you know. It's like have one that's just like a video that the students can check before the class even starts, and then, for example, like, oh, get your brushes together, you know, and then you basically like assemble your brushes before you start the class, kind of like an assignment, and then we save them, and then we start from there, you know. It's like that would be a good idea, actually.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So now I'm seeing, this is the kind of stuff I did for a stand, you know. It's like, it's just adding these areas of the saturation in here. It's like, depending on the person, you know, it's like, I have those, you have like those tiny little micro deposits of fat, you know, it's like inside of, like in the lip surface. So it's kind of like, it's a little embedded in there. So you can see like those little white dots. So anything you can do to introduce some variation, right? So I added some of this pale kind of like color right here on top of the lips now. Gonna get some more around here. And then I can come with some darker stuff, right? So I'm gonna get, let's switch back to my liver spot, that one that I just paint for like the spots, right? Like just a little tiny spots. Just gonna get, gonna sample the red that I already have in here. The reason why I keep like sampling stuff like this is because those colors are being created by a bunch of layers that I'm creating, right? Like I did a bunch of layers here. So if I sample this one, that's the result of all those layers. And I want the similar color to do my little spots in there. So just gonna go a little darker and a little bit more saturated as well. I'm gonna go very tiny with my brush, and I'm gonna pick an area like this. Just introduce a little dot right there. Maybe a little bit more faint right here on the side. Maybe the intensity is too big. Let's just go to 6. And then some other ones around here and around here. And then let's see, she has some more in here. It's the kind of stuff, you know, it's like if you're doing like a natural portrait, right? You're gonna be dealing with this kind of stuff, imperfections, right? Which is the most fascinating thing. And imperfection is a kind of like a strong word too, because I mean, like we are all so different, but it doesn't mean like people are imperfect, right? It's just like we're totally different. I mean, like there's still, you know, person equal the other one. Like even like a perfectly how you call like the twins, right? Like when you get like them perfect like matches to each other, you're still gonna find stuff that's slightly different, you know. So yeah, it's almost like they are clones, but they are not a one-to-one duplicate. In theory, they are supposed to be, but you know, it's like sometimes even personalities is slightly different. So you see, like this kind of stuff, it's like it's what adds up, you know. It's like it's you start blocking the colors and then blending the colors with those little, you know, tricks that I show you guys with adding some whites to blend this area here, you know, things like that. But then the darkers, it's you know, it's like when you get those tiny little spots, and then when you get the whites on top of it and all this stuff, at the end, the result of it is what brings everything to town, you know. It's like it's just like it takes time because it's like a bunch of tiny little passes and things, and constantly looking at the reference and seeing what's in there, you know, and seeing what you can bring. And then you render it, and then if the render looks too strong, then you have to go back here and then, you know, make a little lighter because you don't want it to get too strong. And it's just like a bunch of back and forth, you know. So from this point on in the classes, we're going to be doing a lot of, it's going to be like a little improvement every day by painting things like that, or by doing renders. For example, tomorrow we're going to be dealing with eyes, which is going to be a big one. And then the day after that, we're going to be probably dealing with fixing things and starting to, you know, it's like to tighten things up. For example, like going to the eyelids and really resolving the eyelids and making sure that there's no intersections in there, making sure that we have a nice little membrane, you know, it's like the connecting to the eyeball, right? Like basically like the contact between the eyelid and the eyeball has to be like, you know, very convincing. So we're going to be doing that. So now we have like all this little detail. I'm going to add some more here, some little variations in here, just like very loose. It's like painting, right? Just painting. Very loose, except that we do this much faster than with the actual painting. And then let's get again like a saturated with yellow. So yellow, almost white, right there. And I'm gonna add a little bit of this tiny little dots around the very edge in here. Maybe a little bit less intensity, like 3. I'm gonna just do this, check this out. Introduce some more, like going in, blending down here a little bit. And a little bit more white underneath right here. So the lips at this point here, just with this detail I added in there, you should get something very similar to what we saw in the Stan Winston, you know. Maybe a little bit more whites around here just to get a little bit more close to the reference I see. But yeah, it's like I didn't do much more than this to get that result. A lot of this is going to come from the subsurface scattering itself, you know. It's going to really get those colors here and start blending them together. And then when you render, you get the magic happening. And then tomorrow, when we actually add the eyes and everything, I can just open the shader networks and show you guys all the maps that are plugged the way you have. You can actually update your shader network. If I did any changes in there, for example, you know, you can copy anything that was done, and we can see like a render and a one-to-one reference to whatever was the map, right? Painted. So you guys can copy everything. But yeah, I'm gonna show probably like this area here rendered tomorrow. So it's gonna be easy for you to see what happens when you render that stuff. So now it has a little bit more variation in the lips. And we're gonna move on and do a little bit more of, like I said before, we're gonna be bringing some of the white stuff up. So we're gonna bring, let's see, skin color, this one. I'm gonna use the spray now. So this guy here. And let's see if the color variation is off. Yep. So I can even use like this slightly yellow tone that I have in there, just like to really bring this up right here. So let's bring this first. It's gonna get a little bit more pale. You know what? This spray is not gonna work because like it's too sprayy. So I'm gonna get a little bit more of, you know, gonna get the alpha 35 again. So it's a little bit less of that. A bit more broad detail. I'm going to start lifting this area here. And then underneath the lips in here, this is an important one, especially with a smile like this. You're going to see, for example, like around this area here, there's a compression that happens with the gums below it, right? So it's every time you see a compression, for example, it's important to remember that there is like the blood flow is changed, right? So if you have a compression happening there, probably like the blood flow is not the same. You're gonna get a little bit more white. Same when you have like a compression, someone is making an extreme facial expression, right? The red's gonna go away from that. It's gonna get almost like green, gets like a yellow, pale green sometimes. And you're gonna see this kind of stuff around here. For example, you can see like little glimpses of green right here and yellows, like a strong yellow and green. You know, it's like, and especially like in the bags as well. You're gonna see. In her case here, you don't see much, but with Stan Winston, there's a lot of yellow because of the compression that was happening there. And then underneath the cartilage, for example, here, right, underneath the skin of the nose, in the cartilage, you're gonna see some whites and sometimes slightly yellow as well. So all those areas, you know, it's like when you see compression of something harder pressing against the skin, or a strong facial expression, like I mentioned, you're gonna see this change in blood flow, right? So that's why we're gonna be doing some of that around here. And it's funny because it doesn't seem like much, but when you render, you can tell. You can tell that something is actually looks like it's compressed. It's almost like our eyes capture it unconsciously, you know. You kind of like, you don't know what you're seeing, but it looks more natural if you do it that way. Painting this area as well, just like removing some of that redness that's in here, just by adding some more.
Chris,
yes.
Have you ever heard about OCIO?
OCIO, no.
It's a color management from Sony Imageworks. So it's basically like it renders your diffuse map exactly what you painted, instead of, you know, a little bit changes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
From Sony.
Yes, from Sony.
They're using it in their studios?
It's actually, they made it free for people.
Oh, okay. It's kind of like a open source.
Yeah, open source.
Yeah, very, very cool. Yeah, you see, like I'm not a specialist in anything. So like, for example, the guys at ILM probably like they know what's going on when it comes to this stuff. Because like I sit by a bunch of TDs, and they probably know this stuff. I'm gonna ask them actually. But I mean, like I do my thing, and I'm not a specialist in anything. I don't consider myself like a specialist in modeling or texturing or like you know, it's like lighting anything. But I do things well enough for me to be able to create convincing images, you know. But I cannot see myself as being a specialist in anything. So a lot of this stuff, like tech and everything, I kind of like it goes over my head. But then, but I know how to put in practice, you know, it's like to create something that's believable, just like by, you know, it's almost like a brute forcing my way. So that's why like my shaders are super simple, which to me is the best. You know, it's like if you're a student and you're trying to learn stuff, I would say like, man, don't complicate anything before you pushing as far as you can with the simplicity, you know, and get everything very simple first. And then when you push all the way, and if it's not quite working just yet, then you add another layer of difficulty to that, you know, kind of like the eye thing that I said. I had like the eye assembled in a certain way for like many models now. And then just like with her eyes, now I realized, oh, maybe I needed another piece in there. And then I added the other piece, you know. But before that, it was like, oh, it wasn't necessary. The results are looking good. So yeah. So let's see, I'm gonna add some more right here. So yeah, at this point here, you see like instead of like using the super tiny spec, I'm just using the alpha 35. And the way that I'm doing this, actually, I'm using a little bit more of a fast motion with my hand. If I do it just for as an example here, this is what I'm saying in terms of the importance of gesture, right? So if I do like very slowly here with a very strong brush, you can see like the amount of area that's covered, right? Very slowly. Now if I do the same thing using the same brush but very fast, that's what I get, right? It's much more spread out if I do like a fast motion. So I do this a lot, like when I use any brushes actually, you know, it's like if I need more distance between things, I just do much faster, you know. So in this case here, if I want to cover like a big area, like the cheeks in here, I'm probably going to do like a faster motion. Like that. Introduce some of this white to the whole thing. And it's important to have this broad one like this. It's because like it looks like the skin kind of behaves like this, you know. You get those areas, they're kind of like it's a little bit blushed, right? Like especially when you have like if you're cold, for example, and you look at your skin, you're gonna see like little clusters of blood flow in a certain area, and then it's gonna be completely pale in other areas. So I'm trying to capture that, you know, it's like just adding some of that effect. So I'm gonna paint around here just to add a little bit more of the whiteness around there. And I'm gonna drag this same color around the top as well. And this entire area here, she has plenty of tiny little freckles that we're gonna be adding as well. But first we're gonna establish like the tone of the skin, right? We're gonna get a little bit lighter than it is. I'm gonna get around here. And also, since we are here and gonna be painting for another half an hour only, so I'm gonna introduce some colors in here so you can see some variations as well. So around this area here, I'm gonna start introducing a little bit of the pale green and sometimes a little bit of yellow and orange as well. And sometimes even blues around this area. So you're gonna get like a pale green, kind of like almost like in between, it's kind of like a teal, right? So green, bluish right there. And then I'm gonna do like a very low intensity because this is a very tricky one. So it just has to be like just enough. So you're just gonna add some right here. And then later, obviously, we can add like tiny veins, for example, that can look a little bit more on the green side. Like, so this is like, it's pale green, right? So it's kind of like, I'm lifting this area by adding some lighter tone in there, but at the same time colorizing a little bit more on the green side. But and then I'm gonna have to go and kind of like, you know, even things out. But for now, we're just gonna introduce some of that around there and around here as well, corner of the eye. And then this one is gonna become a little bit more yellow and then orange but I have to introduce at least like one layer of this green, even if it almost completely disappears with a bunch of passes later. We want to make sure that we register it. So like those colors are important, you know. It's like it's the kind of variation that adds like some richness to the color. So just like introduce the color first, and then you can remove almost completely, but always leave a little trace of it. Do some there too. So now I have a little bit like it's very pale. We're gonna be bringing some of that around the eyes right here. And maybe a little bit around here, the nose actually, especially the sides. Because what happens in here, like remember when I mentioned like when there's a compression, right? You get this kind of like a, you cannot see much here, but this area here you see like there's a little bit of yellow and greenish that starts like pouring that way. And here as well, like what I was talking about, you know, it's like maybe it's slightly greenish right there, but it's very, very slight. And the thing is like, I add the color first. Sometimes I go even stronger than what I'm doing now. And then I kind of like bring it back by sampling a similar color that's around that. And then going from there. So let's get some more around here actually. And then I'm gonna go a little bit more yellow now. So the yellow I'm gonna bring around here. And definitely in the corners of the, close to the caruncula here. More yellow and even more orange slightly. A little pale in there. Same around here. I'm gonna make it a little pale. Around here too. And then for the freckles themselves, I can actually introduce some like a hand painted manually stuff. Maybe I can do like a pass that's just like a bunch of freckles here that's kind of like random just to blend things out. So let's try this. Let's sample one of those little freckles. Turn maybe a little darker than that. It's just make intensity very strong so you can actually see what we're doing here. And then for the flow, I'm gonna keep it 0. And maybe the placement I'm gonna make a little bigger so they actually spread out when I spray. Something like that, right? So, but the color is very off. So I'm just gonna try to get, again, something like this. Let's try. Yeah, that's gonna blend better. So let's do maybe a tiny little bit darker than that. Let's be very little, let's see. Yeah, that's gonna work. So let me make the intensity very, very low. Not very, very low, but 30, let's say. And then let's just fill up this area here. Like so. So it kind of like helps because it's kind of like, it is freckles, but it's also kind of like a blend, right? Because it's kind of like a little bit more smooth than the previous ones. And we can do this maybe around the cheeks as well, around here. Some more variation, maybe a little smaller. And then definitely around here. A little rust. And then we can keep the same color on. Let's just go back to my liver spot here. And I'm gonna paint some of that on top of those guys here. Just gonna blend some of those freckles so they are not so spotty, right? Because I had the mask that was super sharp. Another way would be like just like make the mask slightly softer first before I did it. But I like having this sharp little lines. For some reason, it always looks better for freckles, you know, it's like have sharp lines and then you just go in a couple of corners like that and you just like blend it with the rest of the skin around it. But just like leaving some of the freckles very visible, like the edge is very visible. So now I'm just gonna reinforce a couple of them. Is it visible for you guys? Can you see the stuff I'm doing here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I think in the recording is that's basically what's gonna happen. Is gonna kind of go away a little bit, which sucks. Yeah, I wish I could fix that.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a little bit of a compression issue because of the stream, but you can pretty much see like 95, 96% of it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. So yeah, like this kind of stuff here, for example, like I'm gonna be after the class, I'm gonna be painting more. For example, probably like another hour, an hour and a half, and then I'm gonna post tonight, probably like on my Instagram and stuff like that, so you can see what's going on. But I think what we can do, because we have 20 minutes, I think we can actually set up a render. And because just to export this stuff here is going to be super fast anyway. It should take like probably like 50 seconds to export all the maps, which is great. And so you see, like at this point, I'm just adding, you know, so those little extra spots everywhere, just to add some more, you know, it's like a natural feel to it. And then let's just add a little bit more of this slightly yellow, a tiny little bit of green, and a very low intensity. So like, let's do 1. And let's do symmetrical. And I'm gonna paint around here. A little bit of green in those areas. It has to be very, very pale because of, you know, it's like the way that the shader works. If it sees green in there, it's gonna really push the green, you know. So we have to be careful if you're adding it. That's why I use like intensity of 1. And even at 1, sometimes I have to go back and blend stuff back slightly. I'm gonna add a little bit of blue around this area here now. So let's go to pale blue. Maybe a little bit lighter. I'm gonna introduce some blue around here. 1 intensity as well, so very, very low. And then now we can actually blend this with the skin color. Let's do that. So let's sample this area. And with 1 as intensity, it's just gonna go very broadly like this. Something like that. So now we have a little mapping here that we can plug and see what we get, you know? So let's do an export. And obviously I don't have the rest of the face. So let's go, let's see. That's our default material. That's how it looks like right now. And let's go back to outside of HD. And I want to see like a difference, you know, it's like what we just did in comparison to what we had as a render before. So to export this, you don't need to do anything that we do for displacement. You just like go to the lowest resolution, crank the RGB to 100. I don't think you even need that actually for the multi-map exporter. I think in the past you did. I think now actually it's automatic. But before you do anything, let's save the scene, right? Because you're gonna notice this in every single video I record. My sessions when I'm doing like work live like this, I don't ever save. I just save at the very end. So like if there's any crash, I lose like an hour of work. But luckily, I never lost anything. So far, the computer is being pretty sweet to me. Let's just save this one and then export this map and plug straight away and see what we get. So just for comparison, let's see. This is what we had before, right? So we're gonna be able to see some stuff in here. And also I wanna compare it to this one here. So we have like this camera saved already. So we're gonna plug it and see what we get. Because I'm expecting to see some improvement. Let's see. And then, I mean, like that's my whole philosophy, you know, it's like keep things very simple and do things like in iterations. Like what I mean is like plug everything you can at the same time, you know, kind of like as you go, obviously, like you put one map at a time, plug it in there, but at least have them available in the scene. And then you go like and tweak each one of them individually, obviously, but like increasingly, you know, you kind of like go like the next iteration are going to be probably plugging a different, in this case here, a different albedo, but then also analyzing how this albedo is going to play with my specular. If the specular is too strong, I'm going to have to reduce it. If it's too little, I'm gonna have to increase it. But you know, always doing iterations. So I'm gonna rename this one. So I'm gonna just call it Jazz albedo 1. Okay, and then multi-map exporter should be fast. I'm gonna click just texture from Polypaint. I'm gonna keep it at 8K because I like to have all the fine detail, which is not the case for the specular and the other maps, which are gonna keep just 4K. But this one I'm gonna keep 8K. I don't need to switch morph target here because it's not for displacement, right? But that's all I need. And this doesn't make any difference either because the subdivision level here, because this is just for displacement. So should be good to go. Let's see, it should take just a few seconds. It's source images. And let's see if it's the right spot. It's the reading, there you go, okay. Let's see. So let's see how many maps we can get. So 1 is done. Should take, yeah, I think like my calculation is like 50 seconds, I think. Oh, meanwhile, let me just show you this. This is like just a skeleton, right? But this is kind of like the way that the class is gonna work. I'm working this entire thing for now. But basically like it's a little school, right? So this stuff I did over the weekend while doing some work in there. So it's just like a skeleton. So it doesn't have all this stuff yet. So I put the little countdown. For example, in October is going to be the next one I'm going to be running. So there's a countdown in there. There's a class is going to put some information in there. There's a picture of this beautiful man. Then some instructors gallery, blah, blah, blah. Some previous classes. So basically like those are the ones happening, right? Already happened. So those ones are going to give access just to you guys. But not for the new students. The new students going to have access to this one, for example. So if you click it, you're going to go to, for example, buy, right? They're going to have a banner in there, blah, blah, blah. So you have like, you can buy in there. And then I added some links in here as well. So I have testimonials from all my previous students, which are very nice to give me like 26 testimonials, which is really cool. And so in the courses here, you're going to have access to like all the courses, obviously. And then have some frequently asked questions and all this stuff. And everything is based on subscription, right? Not subscription, but I mean, like it's a closed system, so you have to actually log in, and everything is tracked. So like leaking videos, if people want to do shit, they're gonna do shit. But it's at least it's easy to track what's going on. And if you need to suspend someone, you can. But hopefully that's not gonna happen. But this is the skeleton, and I was like, I think at the end it's gonna look cool because if I click one of those videos, for example, like this guy here from May, right? So if I resume the course in here, this is the way it's gonna open. So I'm gonna have a welcome page that has all the links, like to our Facebook book groups, the reference material, all the books that are interesting for portraits, and then this is the introduction, and I can actually add downloads right here, so you don't need to go to Google Drive to download anything. So all the material, support material is going to be there. And then you're going to have like those lessons, right? So you have like all the videos in there. And so you can actually go full screen. Obviously, you have multiple resolutions you can pick. This one is 720. Oh, I think this one was recorded in 720. It was the first one ever, so it was a mistake. But then all the other ones should be 1080p. And the cool thing is that it tracks your progress. So you see like the progress is at 0%, right? So I can actually say, if you watch like 50% of the video, I can actually consider that you watched enough of the video. And I can actually give you like a little credit in there. So at the end, if you watch all the videos, you can get like a diploma, it's like that you did the whole class and all this stuff. So it kind of works like as an actual school, So it's going to be very cool, I think. And there's like places for feedback. You can exchange information in there, and like, it's going to be, I think it's going to be cool. So I'm excited about it. Well, actually, it took longer than I thought, like 1 minute and 57. But let's take a look. Let's plug those maps. So let's get this girl rendered. Let's move her away. And let's click this model. Go to the end. Stan can still name Stan because I brought everything to his scene. So I can just rename her, like, just to be nice here. Jess skin, just to be nice to her. And then you see like my radius here, I don't use any albedo color at all for that render. For the Ray Harryhausen, I actually added a version that was basically like the same albedo color, but just shifted towards this color here, this way. Check this out. So if I plug my albedo here, this is that node that I mentioned, the remap color, right? Which I'm desaturating to from 500 to 460 for the red. So bring it down 0.40. And then I'm actually cranking the blue channel from 500 to 540. And then, but the albedo color itself here, you see like I have everything without any offset or color gain or anything, right? So in that case, when I plugged for Ray, the albedo as a radius actually went to color offset, and I actually cranked this one to look like that skin color that's in the Arnold website. So it's basically like 1, 0.35, and 0.20. So that's the default scatter color that they have. So basically like I'm shifting everything towards that, but at least you still get some of the information from the map itself, you know. But in this case here, I'm not using for this model. And I'm just going to bring back to 0, so no offset. And I'm just going to switch this one to her new face, new maps. Let's see if her face is in here. I don't see any color yet. Oh, there you go. So I can see some color in there. Okay, let's bring this one. And then let's do a render of this angle right here. See which one is this one. So let's try to isolate just a little piece so we don't take too long. Oh, and since I'm here, let me see what's the samples
Chris,
I'm using. Yes.
She looked like a statue in Madame Tussauds, you know.
Was that?
She looked like a statue in the Madame Tussauds.
Oh, yeah, Madame
Yeah.
Tussauds. Yeah, totally. It's funny because like there's a guy who actually follows me on Instagram, and he's an amazing sculptor from Madame Tussauds. He used to sculpt for them. And, yeah, and he comments on my stuff all the time. It's like he's a very cool guy, and it's such an honor, you know, because I was always like a huge fan of those guys. And the thing that's interesting is that my whole philosophy was always like try to create something that was realistic enough to look like one of those Madame Tussauds stuff. And then now people come in and I was like, oh, that's awesome that people can see that, because that's the goal. So let's see, let's try a little render here let's try that. Oh, the intensity, sorry. What I did here, I actually have to play with the light. I'm still canceling there. Because I had an intensity here, I'm using this flashlight in here. And because I was too close from the face when I did the close-up, I had to reduce the intensity, but I was using 40,000 for that specific shot. So let's do a 40,000 and should be closer to what we had before. So just let's compare if we're gonna get like any of those freckles. And then we can do, if we have the time, to do a little bigger render as well. Still reading the map. Once it's all loaded, it should be faster, but oh, there you go. I want to see the lips actually, but let's do this little part first. Let's see if it goes fast enough.
Question, Chris?
Yes.
Tomorrow night, do you think you can show us how you parented the light to the camera?
Oh yeah. It's just like it's a constraint. It's just constrained to it. But I can totally show it.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not too familiar with constraints.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I can totally. Yeah, I mean, like this whole scene here
Yes.
Would be a nice opportunity tomorrow to actually explore everything, you know, because we're gonna be opening up like the eye stuff. I can show you, for example, like the shader for the teeth, lighting, what's plugged in there. You know, it's like what's the intensity for the HDRI. Because the whole intention with the scene here was actually to create the impression that you're photographing someone with a flashlight, right? And when you do that, normally what happens with a real camera is that it kind of like exposes the foreground, so the person, the subject right there, and it underexposes the background. That's why everything goes dark. So to simulate that, I actually I'm basically like emitting very low light from the background, but still emit some light. But it's actually very little. It uses very little visibility in relation to the camera. So I think I use like 0.1 or 0.2 for visibility. So like it's basically like 90% invisible. That means that it goes really dark, and then it creates this effect that's like you know, it's like someone is photographing someone in the foreground, and then the background's getting underexposed. So it's like those little tricks you can do, you know, it's like to make something more convincing.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, and man, you cannot go wrong with the flashlight. All he sells is crazy. It's yeah, like, you know, it's like flashlight, bam. Now this is a little gross, and I have to fix this hair inside, and then those veins, I have to fix them. The peach fuzz is too spread out and too long, so all this stuff, like I mean, like I'm trying to finish those pieces during the classes, right? And I mean, like, it's the kind of stuff that takes at least like another 2 weeks or so of work to make it look nice. So during the break, like in between August and September, I'm probably going to revisit those guys. And I think I'm going to revisit his likeness too. He looks a little bit on the cartoon side, and I'm going to be revisiting that as well. But I have to find time, man. My objective is to actually have actual portraits done. You know, it's like you know, it's like posed, so they have like a slightly tilted heads and stuff like that, and maybe put all of them together in a single shot at some point. And you know, it's like I have ideas, but it's just hard to find the time. It's rendering slower than I thought. I mean, like before it was rendering pretty fast. I know it's because of the maps are still being loaded, but it's already like it's slightly different. So you get a little bit of that blue tone underneath there, right? That stuff that we added, like a little green and blue, little yellow around there. The eyelids should be a little bit darker, so let's compare to this one here. Yeah. So you see, like even around here, things start behaving a little bit more on the more natural tone, right? Before it was just like this plain color. Starting to get a little bit more natural, but slowly you're going to be building on top of this, and then and can get much more stuff done. So tonight, you're probably going to see, if you check my Instagram tomorrow, you're going to see all the stuff we painted today, plus a bunch of other things that probably going to be painting for the next hour or two. And then do another render maybe before I go to sleep, because I go to sleep pretty late. You have to remember that, like, just to upload those videos, it takes about like an hour and a half, sometimes even 2 hours, because I have to, I drop this video into Vimeo, and then Vimeo has to, first, like, is the upload time. So you upload the video, it's like 1.5 gigs. Sometimes it takes about like 20 minutes just to upload it. And then Vimeo has to actually recompress the whole thing to its own format. And then after it recompresses, it does another process, though, like 2 processes. So at the end of the day, basically, like, I'm hostage to this whole process, like for the next like 2 hours. And the thing is, like, I could potentially upload this stuff in the morning, for example, and just get some sleep. But I feel bad for the people who actually are, you know, it's like in different time zones, and they're just like, they're gonna wake up in the morning and then maybe looking forward, like, to watch the video before they go to work or something. And I just don't want to let people hanging, you know. So that's why I kind of like, I torture myself a little bit, and get this stuff uploaded in the same night, you know. It's like, so people can actually watch in different time zones. But yeah. But at the same time, forces me to do more work, you know, which is good. I'm gonna be working on this, like, get more stuff done. So that's a win-win to me. So yeah, you can see the difference in here already, right? It's like got some of the freckles in there, a little bit more of like a natural tone around the nose. And even around here, right? Like, just by adding a little bit of this redness here and this more pale skin over the eyes, it's already looking more natural than it was before. So there's a distinction between like the darker eyelid that I painted with the lighter upper area, and then compared to, you know, it's like slightly more pinkish nose, right? All this stuff, like, it's it really adds like all those little variations. And I like the way that the blue is working right here as well. So blue and green. Yeah, it's gonna work nice. This is not working right here. It's very red underneath the nose. So in comparison to the old one, this was more natural. I'm gonna have to paint that like almost going like towards white as well. So I'm gonna just cancel it. Let's move this down because you want to look at the lips we just painted. All that work for nothing, right? Let's just make a little area like that, and let's complete that. Let's see what we get with the lips. Because we want to make sure that we are getting a nice detail in there. Although it's pretty fast painting, it's starting to work. You see, like I added those little guys here, little, you know, little marks in there. But let's see how this works out with the little dots I added. Yeah, the teeth is another one that's kind of tricky because you have to add like a transparency map, but then it has to go transparent, and at the same time it has to be a kind of like a diffuse transparency. So it cannot go like glass transparency, right? It has to go transparent and milky at the same time. In this teeth, I have to fix. There's a gap in there, so I have to fix the teeth, and I have to actually turn the gums a little bit redder. Just very slightly. It's almost the tone of one, but I want to go slightly darker. So I have to fix those things. But the lips, yeah, it's starting to work. See, like probably around there, you're going to see those little spots I painted. Around here, yep. There's some whites. And then obviously this is not the close-up, so we can try to do, like if it doesn't take too long, do a render of that super close-up so you can see just the lips. And then after that, we can wrap for today. And then tomorrow is going to be pretty crazy with all the eye stuff. You know, it's like most of the stuff are going to be showing it's like opening everything basically. But for the sculpting itself, I'm not going to do a lot of sculpting because I have a video that has everything, like the whole time lapse recorded. So yeah, like the lips are starting to get very natural in there, as you can tell. So let's look. Right? Just have to fix the teeth and the gums, but it's starting to look a little nicer in comparison to that. Now, it got a little bit too pale at the top because I didn't go up enough, right? So this one had more color at the top lip, so I'm gonna have to bring some of that color, and probably down here too. Bring this on. The color is correct. It's just I'm gonna have to bring it lower to match something like this better. And then, so let's do the last one here. Let's just go back to that close-up that we had, which was where? I have a ton of it. Probably this one here. Let's do a render of that. So let's try starting with nothing. And that's overblown, so I'm gonna fix the lighting. But I just wanna get this area around here. It might be too big still, but so let's cancel it for now, and then let's look at the lighting. Come on, Maya, help me here. There you go. So let's get the lighting, and let's go back to 15, I believe. Even like lower than that, maybe like 12,000. And then let's do this. Yeah, I think it's just a matter of like expanding the redness a little bit further. But in terms of the tone, I think it's like it's similar to the tone I see in her in there. You know, maybe it's a little bit more on the pale side for her, but it might have to do with maybe the lighting being a little bit more blue as well. So yeah, I might go a little bit lighter than what I have at this point, but let's see if I. And the gums, as you can tell, you know, it's like it's more pink, right? Like you see, like here, there's a lot of orange in it still. So you're gonna have to go more pink with them, and then matching a little bit more the tone of the lips. So I'm gonna have to do a tweaking in there to get the going. Yeah, so let's see. And I don't know how many of you guys going to be sculpting teeth for your portraits, but you know, it's like in the past, all my models, like they never smiled before because they are, you know, they had no teeth. So all my models smile now because I want to show off teeth that looks cool. And now people are complaining, like, first, like the complaints I would get was like, I would get those emails, like random emails. Why are you modeling just like white old man? You know, it's like kind of like calling me a racist or something. And I was like, dude, it's not just like any random old man. It's just like those guys are my freaking idols, okay? Those guys like influenced my life like as an artist. So don't give me shit for the people I pick as idols, you know? I didn't pick them because of the skin color, you know? I picked them because they're badass artists. And now people are giving me shit like, why are all your models are smiling now? It's like, oh, fuck, man. It's just leave me alone. And then all of a sudden I'm gonna go through a complete like depression, and all my models gonna be frowning and shit, and people are gonna be like, "Oh my god, this Chris Cost is so depressed." Oh man, people don't have anything better to do. I guess it's just like judging you constantly. You know, if they
mine has a teeth.
Yeah, if they spend the same amount of time that they spend like judging other people by doing actual work, they would get so much stuff done, man. It would be incredible.
Yeah, but that actually requires effort, so...
Oh, yes. It's much easier to be a critic. Oh, man. That's why, like, you go to Rotten Tomatoes, right? It's like all those critics having at it. And it's like, man, that's so easy to just bash someone's work. And somebody's like, work is one thing, but when people bash your character, you know, it's like, to me, it's the worst. To me, it's like, it's a no way back to me, you know. It's like if someone starts bashing my character, because I try to be a correct person, you know, and I try to teach that to my kids. But if someone like questions my character, man, I was just like, you know what? Fuck you. I don't want you in my life, you know. Oh man, it's like the internet is a wild place, man. But yeah, look at this stuff. Like the lips, although they have the color just yet, but just that little detail we had just to break up the you know, the surface in there in the corner. The subsurface scattering in Arnold works so well that it blends everything to look more natural, you know. For example, like if you look at the model itself, all that detail is not quite, you know, it's like incredible or anything like that. It's just that the way that Arnold blends it looks really good. Let's get this. So for example, like around the lips, right there, this little corner. Let's just do a preview here. See, this stuff here was like, yeah, there's detail in there and everything, but it's not like great, right? But then you look at the render itself, like, look at that. I love that stuff. So that's why, like I said, you know, it's like you don't need to be perfect in any of these steps, but you have to be competent in every single step, you know. You have to do a competent job, like with the painting and the sculpting and all this stuff. But then if you put things well together, it just works, you know. It's just like it takes just time to put things together. That's all it is. But anyway, guys, I'm sorry, you have a question?
Chris, no, one thing I was going to say is in the Arnold render settings for your displacement, one thing you might want to try is your sub-pixel error.
Uh-huh.
So by default, Arnold has it at 0.
Oh.
One thing I like to use is start with a setting of 2.
Uh-huh.
So that basically all that does is your edge length at render time when it's subdividing.
Uh-huh.
So you could start it at 2 and then work down from there until you get the exact look that you want.
Oh,
but it'll speed up your render quite a little bit.
Let's see. So it's under the Arnold node displacement?
Yeah.
So which one you're talking about? Or subdivision?
So right there, you say, let me see.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the adaptive error? I'll tell you right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be your pixel error.
Pixel error. Oh, adaptive error right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what should I do? Like 2?
Between 1 and 2. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. See, I've never used this slider here. That's very cool. I'm gonna definitely try it. If you
I'm sorry. So what does the adaptive error do?
So that's basically your edge length at render time. When you have it at 0, it'll try and subdivide it all as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have it at, for example, like between 1 and 2, it'll subdivide it as just a pixel length of 1, and then everything else will get added as a bump.
Huh, interesting. Very cool.
And one way that you can see also exactly what it's doing is if you go to your I'll tell you right now, toolbar icons, show debug shading icon. So if you go to your Arnold render view and you go to window,
Okay.
toolbar icons, show debug shading icon.
Uh-huh.
So right there, you see how you have that new pull down, and you can switch that from shading down to wireframe, and you can see your wireframe exactly
Really?
how it's subdividing it. Yeah.
That's crazy, dude. That's awesome. Thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
like after class, test it out on your own so you can see exactly what it's doing.
Yep.
And you can also switch it between shading and normal, so you can
Mhm.
see exactly how it's affecting your normals.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think we're done for today, and then tomorrow at the same time, and let's build some eyes tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Awesome.
guys.
Looking forward to it.
See you
Thanks,
guys.
Chris.
Thanks.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Grace.
Bye.
Thanks, Grace.
Thank you.